Well, it's the 6th of January 2025. I'm Gary Warsman, a former UK police constable of 18 years, and since 2022 I have acquired, with the help of others, irrefutable, verifiable and corroborative evidence of international government fraud that has been deliberately facilitating the most heinous crimes against humanity, but in particular against the children. It's going to stop. It must stop. I'm calling for international sustained working strikes starting on the 15th of January 2025, as well as the withholding of all tax contributions on a conditional basis, and to use that as leverage to gain a reaction from our government organisations who are completely ignoring the irrefutable evidence so far, but also then be used as leverage to implement certain measures that must, I believe, take place based on the evidence to change the trajectory of humanity whilst we still can. But in the meantime, I'm going to continue showing evidence, and this evidence that I'm going to show now is absolutely mind-blowing and critical. It's evidence from a very brave person called Vanessa Emery. And what I'm going to do, I can't verify and corroborate the specific information that she provides, but I will then see and show you where that leads and how important that information is, where it leads to, that then ties in with all of my stuff. So what I've done is taken screenshots from the correspondence and the evidence, and I've pasted it into a document so that I can present it. And this document will be made available to the public. I've checked with Vanessa, and as I said, incredibly brave lady. She was quite happy for me to disclose all information. Okay, but I've decided I'm just going to disclose her name as well as the correspondence, but I've redacted some of it just to try and protect Vanessa as much as we can. If anything happens to Vanessa, and it's important that any of you involved in this, listening to this, understand this, then the unredacted document will be disclosed fully to the public, and things will be in motion to put that in place. So there was other evidence that I was going to bring out prior to this, but I think this is more important. I still have the before Iona evidence linking into the Archbishop of Canterbury and Durham, and I will get around to doing that at some point. There's also various other evidence that I have acquired, which now also appears to link into the 7th of October attacks in Israel, okay, by Hamas, linking into this fraud. I suspect that was all staged and part of the deception in relation to this crime. It also appears to link in with the evidence potentially to the bombing at the Manchester Arena. But we're going to do this evidence now because I think this is absolutely critical. So let's look at the correspondence initially. And these are emails. You can see that this was an email and it was sent on the 11th of May 2024 to me. And the heading is Theft of the Crown, Abduction, Kidnap, Child Sex Trafficking, Money Laundering, and so on. I know all authorities are involved in this. And it was sent to me. You can see my email address here at the top there on the 16th of May 2024. And I've redacted her email, but you can see from Vanessa Emery. And you can see she's sent it to various other email addresses, including GB View News, I believe, but Views under Views. Also the Housing Authority, it looks like, in Dover, etc. So let's look at this email, and we're going to go through it all. So this is the email that was copied to me, but it was originally sent, you can see here, on the 25th of February 2022 to another email, and this was just copied into me at a later date, okay? So the date that this email was copied into me was on this date, the 16th of May 2024. Now, interestingly, and again, I will say I can't verify and corroborate what Vanessa has personally experienced, of course, but this ties in, the 25th of February, is as I'm starting to make inquiries within my company. So read into that what you will. Okay, this is when I'm starting to make the inquiries within my company, which is called Export Manor Freehold Limited, and where I later, or around that time actually, acquired forged bank documents appearing to have been produced by the Treasury Department of Lloyds Bank, and then that triggered the investigation into the international fraud. So let's look at this email. And it says, Dear Mark Sexton. Now, Mark Sexton is a former police officer, okay, who has refused to collaborate with me over this fraud. Okay, I've had direct contact with him, and he's refusing to collaborate together on this. Dear Mark Sexton, my real identity was stolen, and I was renamed Vanessa K. Emery, and I've just redacted the addresses, but I have left Canterbury because this is very important. The Archbishop of Canterbury has recently resigned. That is absolutely connected to all of the exposure that I'm making, because Justin Ware with the Archbishop of Canterbury links back into the international government fraud, linking to the Freemasons, which links into the child trafficking and the crimes against humanity. And here we are, we now have a link, and the address is very close to Canterbury. So it all started in the early 60s. My father took me, my real brother, to his theme park in Blackpool Pleasure Beach, for a day out, as he was meeting Walter Elias, aka Walt Disney. My grandfather and the press there were there, presumably that's meant to be. Here is my real brother. Now, she's presumably sent photographs on the original email. I haven't got those photographs, and I wouldn't probably show them anyway at this moment in time. Real brother and me and our mum and dad, we arrived at Blackpool in a long black car with a flag on the bonnet. We also had a nanny who was with us. We all got out of the car, and Dad put me on his shoulders, and my brother was holding Dad's hand. We walked into the pleasure beach, but when the TV and press arrived, Dad asked the nanny, to take me and my brother around the park until he had finished the press conference. We walked off with the nanny, who was holding my brother on her left hand and holding me on her right hand. The next thing, we were both grabbed from the nanny's hands, and we were taken. We were both screaming. Then we were bundled into a car and cloth put over our faces. Whatever was on the cloth didn't smell nice. In brackets, I now know this to be chloroform. We were both put to sleep. Then we were driven in this car into Bloomfield Road, Blackpool, which was a 3-storey guest house owned by a grey-haired man calling himself Geoffrey Paul and his wife Kathleen Jarvis. This is their daughter Gillian Paul and her husband Kenneth Williams. Anyway, when me and my brother arrived at the guest house, I was taken to a bedroom on the 3rd floor and locked in the bedroom screaming for my dad. My brother was taken into a bedroom on the 2nd floor. I never saw my dad or my brother again. I was kept at this guest house, it seemed, for months, but I'm not sure how long it was. I was fed dinners in this bedroom, and the door was always locked. The grey-haired man and his wife were constantly putting medication into my food and constantly chloroforming me because I wouldn't stop crying for my dad and my brother. Weeks passed being locked in the bedroom. All there was to do, I presume, was watch Blackpool Tower with its lights flashing. Weeks or months later, I was picked up from the guest house in Blackpool with this man, top left of the picture, his name Michael Emery, who then convinced me he was my father when I already knew he wasn't. But I kept my mouth shut. He then drove me to Kent, and that is when the other 3 on the photo had me believe they were my stepfather's brothers and sisters. David Emery, real name Leslie Ann Allen Fields, Darrell Emery, real name Harry Lee, and Barbara Emery, real name could be Joseph Lee, as Darrell and Barbara are real half-brother and sister. My stepfather had opened an Ancestry account, and I've just redacted the account. Again, this will all be fully disclosed if anything happens to Vanessa. That is when I got the truth to his real identity. I didn't get the truth to this horrific crime until my stepmum died, in brackets now found out she was my auntie. She had left all evidence and photos, being a wedding photo, to the whole truth of the crown, stolen from me and my brother. Anyway, when I first arrived at Michael's house in Kent in 1968, my brother, whom was at the guest house with me when we were abducted, was in the house in Kent, which is near Canterbury. So the so-called brothers and sisters must have took my brother to Kent, then come back for me. Anyway, we grew up together here. The pictures of me and my brother here taken at this address, and this is the first time I ever met the mother who brought me and my brother up. Her name was Joan. We both called her Auntie Joan for a year. Then her name changed to Joyce Emery. This is the picture of her taken with me and my brother was taken when me and my brother was taken to Kent. My eyes are terrible. I'm reading all of this on my phone, and all of this is done on my phone, so I apologise for the presentation and me struggling to read it. The imposter family were constantly beating me and my brother. Now, obviously, I can't verify and corroborate this. I have redacted the names, so as not to implicate individuals in specific crimes, or the most serious crimes that are being mentioned here. So the imposter family were constantly beating me and my brother, burning us by tying us to the immersion heater in the airing cupboard. A person was named, and they, according to Vanessa, were constantly pulling me across the floor by my hair. Every meal was laced with drugs to make us sleep. Now, this ties in with other evidence that I'm getting from other people when they were children, that drugs were being used to suppress them. All of these imposters were all living in this address. Anyway, when my real brother, Jeffrey Emery, reached 7, nearly 8 years old, see the picture below, he was taken out of the address with a brown suitcase by David Emery and Barbara Emery. They told me he was starting a new school and I could visit him anytime I wanted, but I never saw him again. A week after they took my brother Jeffrey, another lad was brought to the house, and his name was also Jeffrey Emery as well. See the photo with me and the second Jeffrey Emery. When the second Jeffrey was placed into the family, now this is quite graphic and I apologise, and I have checked with Vanessa and she wants me to include everything. Okay, just please forgive how graphic this is. But the truth, and this is very much Vanessa's view on this, because we've had various correspondence. She said the truth must come out to the world in relation to what's happened. So, when the second Jeffrey was placed in the family, I wasn't allowed to play out with friends because I was telling everyone that he wasn't my real brother. A certain particular person warned me that if I didn't keep my mouth shut about David and Barbara taking my real brothers, he would cut off my fingers. The next day, he cut 2 of my fingers off with secateurs. Weeks passed with me locked in a bedroom, only allowed downstairs to eat dinner. One day, I got out of the house, and the 2 women who lived at the address dragged me into the house, took me upstairs, pulled my knickers down, and pushed 2 knitting needles into my vagina. I managed to escape, running back into the house, told my stepmom, and she went to call the police. But somebody ripped the phone out of the wall. We lived in this address until I was 13 years old, constantly being tortured and abused. They were always beating my stepmom. The doors were always locked so that she couldn't get out of the house either. We then moved to another address. This was in Aylsham, which is, I've had to include Aylsham because you'll see how relevant it becomes later. And this is very near to Canterbury, okay? When I reached 17 years old, my mum and dad, in brackets step parents, went out for drink one night, Friday the 9th of May 1986. When they got back home, a row started with my second brother. I watched, and they've named the person, beat the daylights out of my second brother with a wooden bed leg, constantly beating him till he collapsed to the floor. Then he pulled out a small gun, in brackets a pistol type, and shot him in the back of the head. He was murdered instantly. In brackets, bearing in mind Michael Emery worked as the only head porter in Canterbury Hospital authorised to go into a mortuary. Mr. Jeffrey Paul owned a funeral parlour in Castleford, and Barbara Emery worked in a church. The next morning after the murder, which was in brackets Saturday the 10th of May 1986, this next day, a name mentioned contacted David at 6:30 a.m. by telephoning saying, "Dave, I've killed him. It was an accident. If we have to break the law, we break it. If we have to take Vanessa out, we take her out." 6 months after that killing, I took an overdose because I couldn't get their conversation out of my head. After the overdose, while I was still in hospital, 3 doctors came to ask why I'd tried to take my own life. So I told them what, and then the name, had done. They murdered him and both covered it up and buried him in Aylsham Cemetery 5 days after the death. No coroner turned up. An ambulance turned up and took the second Jeffrey's body away on a stretcher. They didn't even cover his face, so it looked like he was still alive. David told me that he had words with the ambulance men to say that my brother was alive because he said it will kill my mum knowing he was dead. I soon learned to keep my head down and stay quiet to survive. When I reached 20 years old, I gave birth to my son. I was given my first council house, and then there's the address. One night I went to bed, checked my son at 3 a.m, and he was gone from his cot. I was frantic, screaming in the street, "Where's my baby?" Little did I know the neighbour, and I mentioned the neighbour, had been in my house and kidnapped my son. The neighbour's real name is given here. See the picture below. This horrific man still lives in Aylsham, using a fake identity. He took my son to my parents for no reason whatsoever. Then everything was set up. When I went to my parents to get my son back, I knew it wasn't my son, and I was told to shut up. Of course it's your son, with no explanation to why. So-and-so had broken into my house and took my son. This is the son I've been bringing up, and this is my biological son I've just found, stood on Barbara's driveway in New Zealand. Barbara Emery lives at this address, in a redacted address in New Zealand. The photo of my real son was taken on her driveway last year. She took my brother when he was 7, nearly 8 years old, and took my son after he was switched at birth. They murdered my parents. We lived in Buckingham Palace. The photo of my mum and dad was taken inside Buckingham Palace. We're going to look at that photo later, I believe. I have untold crime numbers, but the Kent police are all involved in this crime. Now, of course, many of you that follow my evidence, you will see that the police are involved in this international government fraud in collaboration with other government organisations and with the royal family, as well as the intelligence agencies and politicians, etc. The councils are also heavily implicated and linked to this international fraud. Reading on, it says the story is that big it's getting hard to write anymore, and I'm petrified. The imposter family are connected to Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, and so on. They own BlackRock and Vanguard, and they are all using fake identities. Now, hopefully, if you've seen my evidence, you'll see that these companies, not so much Vanguard, but BlackRock and pharmaceutical companies, are all linking in massively, including the vaccines, all part of this international government fraud and the conspiracy against humanity. Reading on, it says, I hold the real Queen's, and this is important, I hold the real Queen's coronation book. I have my father's gold wedding ring with a secret message written inside the ring. The fake queen, okay, because she was alive at the time of this, now is wearing my dead mother's wedding ring. This is my biological brother they abducted and changed his name to Paul Andrew Emery. His address is this, in Auckland. We have been in contact since July 2021. Now his wife, praying wife, has told him to block me after agreeing to take a DNA test that I paid £209 for and sent it to him, but his wife has pressured him not to do the DNA test. I can't fit all the frauded certificates on here, but I would like to have a meeting with you to please show you everything that I've got. I have hundreds of names who are involved with the crime and now have the imposter family's real identities. I've been researching the crime over 50 years. Ancestry have 2 insiders working in the crime. Their profile names are this. Babies were killed, sold and switched into other families. My internet is playing up now as I'm being watched all of the time. My phone calls are being intercepted by the police, so I will leave it there and pray to God you contact me. Yours faithfully, Miss Emery. P.S. The initials that are stamped into my mum's real coronation book are the same initials stamped inside my father's gold wedding ring that I have. In the last 18 months, 8 people I've spoken to, including my private investigator, are all. And here's another email from Vanessa. This is dated the 16th of May 2024, and it says, Hi Gary, I have irrefutable evidence that my stepmother left me. It was all hidden behind photo frames. I was kidnapped from my real father inside Blackpool Pleasure Beach. I can't talk on here because everything I do and say is being watched. I can send you this. Here's another email. This is showing a screenshot of various emails from Vanessa to me in my Gmail inbox. And here's another email there on the 16th of May again, 1540, sent to me, and I've just redacted her email, and it says, and this had photographs attached to it, and I'm going to show you, and it says if you zoom into the first page, you see the initials MG stamped on the page. Now zoom into the gold ring, then look closely at the bottom, at the right bottom corner of the pram picture. Also here is the photo of my real parents, the real King and Queen of England. My mobile number is this. I have the whole story. Charlie Ward has my story and some of the main evidence I gave him when I met him. Look forward to your reply. So this is on the right here. It's just showing the email with the attachments, photograph attachments. And now we're looking at the photographs. This is the one of the pram, and it has it says his second birthday, 14th of November 1948. Now this date is actually very relevant. It's the date of the Israeli-Arab War. Okay, and a year prior to that, the United Nations, who are heavily linked into this fraud, wrote a petition that led to the Israel-Arab War. 1947 is also the date on the website that I've recently I've gone to, leading from previous evidence from Durham and the Bishops Auckland and Holy Island in Northumbria in the UK, and leads to a website in relation to Iona and a prophecy by St. Columba, and the date on that website is also 1947, which all ties in. And you'll see as we go through, there's lots and lots of dates all linking together, okay, around this time. Here's another photograph of one of the attachments, and this, I believe, is in relation to one of the private investigators that Vanessa was using, I believe. It says his first employment was at mortuary, yet to be confirmed. As to the name of said job, and he received threats against his wife. I've just redacted the name that this relates to, but it will be released if anything happens to Vanessa. Later he began to work for Bond and Joseph as a barrister. The names gentleman has advised my client to go to the Crimes Commissioner for Kent Police and has knowledge about a substantial amount of crimes committed. He himself was a lawyer and came to Kent as a criminal defence solicitor. However, he has since retired a few months ago. Bond and Joseph are still active and based in Canterbury. This crime started in 1924. Vanessa Emery was the very first child to fall victim to the crimes. These crimes include money laundering, murder, fraud. I won't read all of this, but it includes falsifying documents such as birth certificates and marriage certificates, etc. This ties in with the falsification of the company's house registration system. Reading on, it says kidnap, deception, torture, such as grievous bodily harm and actual bodily harm, along with the removal of limbs, more specifically fingers of Vanessa Emery, threatening behaviour, including those who would imply death threats, would imply death threats, arson, manipulation, rape, the list goes on, and each day that passes, and then there's an address with each day that passes, and then there's an address underneath that I've just redacted and some other information. So here's some of the other photographs, and this is just showing them on the left attached to the email, and on the right we're actually looking at them. So this is the book that Vanessa is referring to, that was, I believe, left by her supposed stepmother, and you can see the initials MG underneath. So again, I'm just showing you the information that she's provided to me. This is the ring that she was referring to, claiming to be her father's ring, and a tiara. I think it's a tiara, isn't it? And like I say, this will be made available. On the left there, it's just showing another section of the email and the other photographs. So this is another photograph of the book that Vanessa is claiming was handed down from the real royal family, and here's the photograph of who I believe Vanessa is claiming to be the real heirs to the throne that she claims were murdered. And apparently this was taken, I believe, up in Buckingham Palace, according to Vanessa. Here's another email from Vanessa 1658 on the 16th of May. To me, it says, "This was the report from my private investigator, and I have tried sending you part 2 of the theft of the crown, but it's not letting me send it to you." On the back of my mum and dad's photo is the name and address of their private photographers. They are the same people who took the photos in my mum's coronation book. Sorry, it's a bit blurry. I have the original photo. Anyway, look forward to hearing from you or hear from you. I stayed quiet for over 50 years to survive. As soon as I exposed everything to the police, the uncle, who's been proved by DNA not to be related to me, locked me up in mental health. Now mental health have seen everything, and I had a meeting with them to show them everything. They decided to discharge me 3 years ago. I was under them for 1 year. They lost me my self-employed business of 21 years. I have so much more on this imposter fake family of mine. The fake imposter auntie was faked her death 3 times. She works in a church. Look forward to hearing from you. PS, from 2019, year of the outbreak, I sent emails to MPs and all police stations. The papers, I've been to every authority and every solicitors, find out by my investigator that they are all connected. They cut off 2 of my fingers. Now, I've found the same with my investigation. They are all connected to this international government fraud, and they're all completely ignoring the evidence. This included mainstream media when I first started contacting them, as I started to expose this. Okay, please watch part 2 to see further evidence from this document, and we'll come into the evidence that I acquired from Vanessa's information. Take care. Bye-bye.